This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Is there a sports podcast in Detroit that people are talking about?
Hey, everybody, this is Freddie Cohen of ESPN Radio. When I'm not talking about breaking news on ESPN Radio, I'm always a fan and listen to the Detroit Sports Podcast, and so should you.
Behold the King of Kings.
13 to shoot. Turns, gets to the rim. Take that! Michigan State. He is not playing around today. 11 points. Abdul Rahman high off the glass and in, plus the foul. Wagner playing with 3 fouls. Inside, pump fake, left hand counted and the foul as he just abused Nick Ward.
Miles Bridges. Coaches will talk to him about being more selfish, more importantly, more aggressive.
Winston feeds Bridges. Posting. Baseline, lefty, flick, in and out. Wagner behind the back, down the lane, ankle breaker. Whoa!
Knowing that he has the ability to get by Nick Ward off the dribble.
Now Matthews slicing to the hole and pounds it down.
Cuz, what the fuck is this nonsense? You finally figured out
that. Eat that.
You finally figured out how to put together some audio, and this is what you came up with?
That's what I give you, bro. Bow down.
It was nice, huh?
Oh, my goodness. The only thing that I'm disappointed about is we only get to beat your ass once this year. We got to wait till either the Big Ten tourney or meet you in the NCAA tournament.
God, I'm so hoping that it's Michigan State for the Big Ten tournament, because when you have an opportunity to get revenge and going forward, it's nice to know, at least now for the foreseeable future, it'll never happen again where these two teams only play each other once, because now the Big Ten is going to go to a heightened schedule, 20 games in the Big Ten schedule. Michigan and Michigan State will play each other home and home each and every time, each and every year going forward. So this nonsense will never happen
How
again.
does the Big Ten blow this and screw this up? This makes absolutely no sense to me.
Exactly.
Like, what is Jim Delaney doing? Honestly, that guy needs to get off his coffers and stop screwing around. He messes everything up with the Big Ten. Let's go bring Rutgers and Maryland in. Yeah, that's a good idea. Oh, hey, let's let Michigan and Michigan State only play once this year in basketball. Oh, that's a good idea. If Michigan and Michigan State could play each other 15 times in a season, we'd sit there and we'd complain because they couldn't play 16. Come on now. What are you doing?
What did you think? What was the biggest key for Michigan in terms of their victory, 82-72, on the road, a massive performance, and one where after that tough loss versus Purdue, many people felt like Michigan got screwed on that final call at home versus Purdue. Then you go on the road, you play Michigan State, and really it was a statement game, a game that really put a lot of eyes on Michigan. A lot of eyes now are on that program and thinking, oh my goodness, the expectations have been risen to the point where people do believe that Michigan can contend for the Big Ten regular season title and maybe even make another run for the Big Ten tournament title. So it was an eye-opening performance. A lot of people who messaged us on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast said, wow, one of the more complete performances you're going to see both offensively and defensively by that Michigan program.
I was enthralled and ecstatic with the way they played. I was surprised too, because when we talked last week, we sat there and I was like, Michigan's got to play a very complete game, both ends of the floor. They've got to hit threes, and they're going to have to hope Michigan State comes out flat and doesn't make a few baskets, and you're going to have to out-rebound them. Some of that held true, but really and truly what it came down to was hitting their free throws. There was a point there where Michigan made every single free throw but one. I think they were like 21 of 22 at one point, and they forced a ton of turnovers. Michigan State was so lax with the ball, just giving it up left, right, and center. And then Michigan State's inability to either hit a three or attempt a three, I think, buried them early. You know, once Michigan got rolling, it was like a freight train, and Michigan State just couldn't keep up and couldn't slow them down. And every time you sent them to the line, they made you pay. And they would force turnovers on defense, and Michigan State not being able to hit a three to get back in the game. If Michigan's on fire from beyond the arc, you are going to have to battle them and match them and either draw fouls as you're making buckets, or you're going to have to sit there and hit deep shots, and you're going to have to hope your three ball's falling. That's the only way you're going to be able to beat Michigan. And that's kind of what happened in this game.
and you look at it and you say, wow, Michigan really made an emphasis on defense. You could tell right away that there was a solid emphasis, there was a solid game plan, and when you read around and you kind of look at what went into that performance, you start to look at, okay, John Beilein did some things in film work. He obviously watched what happened in the Ohio State game for Michigan State, in that you recognize early on, okay, how do you limit Michigan State? How do you keep them off the offensive glass? How do you limit three-point shots? How do you limit their transition scoring? How do you do these things? Well, one of the early things you recognize is, okay, who's one of the big leaders offensively outside of Miles Bridges? Nick Ward. And so Ohio State...
Nick Ward got destroyed by Wagner. Left, right, center, up the middle, round back.
Well, here's what happened. Obviously, they decided, okay, based on what Ohio State did, Ohio State doubled Nick Ward, and he was inefficient. And then you go do the same thing, and you have to make him, when he gets the ball, make decisions. And obviously, it led to some turnovers. It led to inconsistent scoring. He didn't step up his game. And you look at what Michigan was able to do to Michigan State. Michigan State only got 2 fast break points, 8 offensive rebounds total in the entire game, and 3 for 13 from the three-point line. And you look at that and you go, wow, what a complete performance. Other people besides Miles Bridges had to step up. You had an opportunity. One of the bigger things that State fans are looking at is, okay, Tom Izzo and Michigan State had a chance to make a statement versus Michigan at home. You didn't play this game in Ann Arbor. You played this game at home in front of your house, in front of your crowd and your supporters. And many people are looking at, you know what? Yeah, the kids on the floor did some things, and there were a lot of things that we can pick at in terms of what was going on. But many people are pointing the finger not at the players, but they're pointing the fingers at Tom Izzo, because there were certain situations that people that are in the know have kind of looked at. And I said too, in that one of the key matchups you had was Jaren Jackson Jr. was guarded by Duncan Robinson. And people were like, okay, how do you not kick that ball into Jaren Jackson, who many people are calling him maybe a potential top 5 pick if he decides to go to the NBA draft? And you couldn't execute that. You couldn't see what everybody else in the entire country saw, that you had to get the ball to Jaren Jackson and let him do some things on the inside. They couldn't do it. They could not, for whatever reason, facilitate the offense with whatever Michigan was doing on defense. And that requires adjustment. That requires coaching. And Michigan State supporters are highly upset because everybody walks away feeling like, wow, John Beilein worked Tom Izzo. And that's not supposed to happen at this point in time in the career of Tom Izzo. You're not supposed to get worked by your opponent. Now, you can lose. You can play like you played in that first half, but you can't go out there and get outscored 48-35 in the second half. That can't happen. You can't go out there and have 18 turnovers in a game that leads to 26 points for Michigan. Again, we see it at Michigan State that when the moment gets a little bit too tough, when the temperature rises, Michigan State sometimes succumbs. And with all these turnovers, it seems like at this point in time, why is it that Tom Izzo and Michigan State and the Spartans continue to play this way when they do play bad? When they play good, like when they played versus Maryland, they look like an efficient team. Everything was going well. But when a team like Michigan comes into your house and punches you in the mouth and you take it, Michigan State fans are really highly upset. And most of the time, you do hear Tom Izzo spoken about in a favorable fashion. This week, he's getting killed.
Do you think Michigan State at this point in the season, and maybe it's just this team, I mean, there's been times where Michigan State has had just a wealth of talent, and they're just not tough. They're not a tough enough team, whether it be mentally or physically. Do you think this team just isn't tough enough? With all the talent in the world, maybe they rely a little bit too much on that, and they just don't have enough heart. And then when you get popped in the face, like you said, punched in the mouth, and you get bullied around on your own court, you got your stuff pushed in by your rival, your in-state rival, a team that I think at this point, in just the way that the program has been built, you need to start taking Michigan basketball very, very seriously. John Beilein's a very good coach. You know, he doesn't go out there. He does exactly what Mark D'Antonio does. Goes out there and gets kids that nobody else wants. Gets 3-star recruits. You know, he's not sitting there pulling in 5-star guys or Mr. Basketball, Michigan Mr. Basketballs like Tom Izzo does. He just gets guys who fit his system and are able to sit there and do fundamental things like not turn the ball over, hit 3-pointers, hit your free throw shots, and it ends up turning out into wins. And they've got to have some heart. And Mo Wagner, that guy is the heartbeat and the pulse of that Michigan team right now. And you're just not seeing something like that with a guy like a Miles Bridges or a Nick Ward with Michigan State.
And many people are also giving credit outside of John Beilein to assistant Sadie Washington, who was tasked with coming up with a game plan to defeat Michigan State. And for those that do know, Sadie Washington spent 10 years as an assistant at Oakland. And so he had a chance to game plan. He's had a chance to see what Michigan State does. He's a second-year assistant, and many people do credit him with putting together a really solid defensive effort, scouted the team very well, and helped his crew defeat Michigan State. So you give him credit. You give John Beilein credit. To speak on Michigan State's toughness, I do believe they're tough. I do believe that they can handle things when there is adversity. But the problem is, outside of Miles Bridges, let's just say, for example, a team decides to double team him or decides to take him away. Who else is going to step up? The heartbeat of that team is Nick Ward and Cassius Winston as well. They got to facilitate. They got to run the offense. And when they got taken away, it seemed like there was a concerted effort to, okay, let's limit Winston, let's limit Joshua Langford, Miles Bridges, and Nick Ward. And by doing that, Michigan State's offense in the second half collapsed. They just were not able to adapt. And I think that's what is really tough sometimes when you're talking about college kids, is sometimes when you have a game plan and you got to go out and execute it, sometimes the opponent is doing some things that you are not prepared for, or they're doing some things that you have to fight through. And so at this particular time, in terms of how Michigan State is playing, they were unable to adapt. You know, when you have, in combination of Winston, Langford, and Bridges, only make 12 field goals for the entire game and have 10 turnovers combined with those three, those are your leaders. Those three guys have 10 of your 18 turnovers. So when your leaders aren't there and you're not executing a game plan properly, and then in the end, everybody saw it. Michigan State could not handle Michigan's ball screen. Literally, it was like, okay, Michigan, ball screen, execute. Ball screen, execute. Ball screen, execute. At some point, we were all looking and watching it going, is Michigan State ever going to adapt? Are they ever going to change? And I do think that's what's separating John Beilein right now, is I do think that when you break it down just a little bit deeper, John Beilein has an offensive system, but it's looking like it's more tailored to what he has. And Tom Izzo's trying to say, hey, this is my system. Y'all come up and do what you got to do to fit what I do. And sometimes when that happens, you see what you see, and you see a team struggle in the midway point of the season if they can't execute it. John Beilein's team, they can do a lot of things offensively. They can have a player like Mo Wagner do some things and get inside and shoot outside, and you have adaptability. And you see John Beilein's experience, maybe with a less talented team, you see what he's able to do on that front, whereas Tom Izzo, I think, is just trying to say, hey, we got to do these things, and if we don't execute it, then so be it, we're going to lose.
I'd love to tell you that this is the typical Tom Izzo midseason swoon, where you struggle a little bit, and Tom Izzo goes off a little bit, and then he recants, and he's like, no, it's my fault, I shouldn't have did this. But I'm not sure if this is the same midseason swoon that we've seen time and time again that gets this team ready for the NCAA tournament. Because you sit there, you go and you get manhandled by OSU. You then come back home and you play Rutgers, and that was a nail-biter. You almost lose that game. And then you bring in your rival a few days later in Michigan. You look decent for the first half, but it was still kind of touch and go. You never felt like you were really in control of that game. And then in the second half, it was an onslaught, and you just couldn't keep up. You know, these last three games, I think, have shed a lot of light on some issues that are bubbling underneath the surface for Michigan State. And I don't necessarily think it's Tom Izzo. I understand what you're saying, that he's maybe not tailoring his system to what he's got, but this seems almost like it's a legitimate crisis for Michigan State and for Spartan fans, because these last three games have been abysmal. Absolutely atrocious. Now you got to bring Indiana in, and you got to go to Illinois, and then you're going to have to play Wisconsin. And, you know, I'm not saying that that's a death sentence, but Indiana usually has a pretty good team, and Wisconsin usually has a pretty good team, and Illinois will run up and down the floor with you. So this is going to be a real tough stretch over the next three games. I expect them to get their act together, but geez, how the mighty have fallen, being the number one ranked team in all of college basketball just a week and a half ago even, and now you're 9 after basically 3 games you probably should have lost. You only sat there and took an L for 2 of them. I think there are some things going on, and Michigan State needs to watch things a little bit more closely. And you're right, Miles Bridges he's the straw that stirs the drink there. He is the heartbeat. He is the soul of that team. But there's got to be some other guys who are held accountable. Other guys have to do some things. And he's got to get a little bit tougher. He's got to get a little bit more nasty. He's got to want the ball in his hands. And I just don't see that from Bridges enough. He needs to have the ball all the time. You know what I'm saying? Be a little bit more selfish. And a guy like Nick Ward needs to be on the floor more. When he sat there and he played against Michigan, he was only on the floor for like 14 minutes. Now, I understand he got in some foul trouble, but geez Louise, that's probably your second best player on that team. The most high-end, top-level potential that you have. It probably goes Bridges, and then it goes Ward. Ward has a legit shot to go to the NBA and actually do something.
The one complaint that fans that support Michigan are saying is, what's up with the free throws late? I mean, seriously, game in, game out, when it's time to hit those clutch free throws, they were able to, at the very end, hit the clutch free throws, but Simpson's having a hard time.
Simpson he's
having a problem.
He's got to figure some things out. He is not, there's going to be some type of a changing of the guard. I don't know if it's going to happen this season or if it'll be next season, but he does not seem like he's a player who has all of the abilities to play at this level, if you understand what I'm saying. Like, he's a very good player, but he seems like he'd probably be better coming in off the bench, not necessarily a guy who's out there in crunch time, because he's not very good from the stripe. And you need to be good, especially down the stretch. You have to be good from the charity stripe. Otherwise, you're not going to see the floor. You're not going to play. You can't play. It can't put you out there. He sat there and he was fouled and fouled and fouled and fouled. And the guy sat there, he starts off hot, going 2 for 2, and then next thing you know, he ends up 5 for 10. You know, you basically hit 3 of your last 8 shots from the charity stripe. It's not going to work. It's not going to get it done, especially in a game that was that big.
Now, Michigan State supporters are kind of looking at and saying, okay, in the past, we've gone through this. You've even talked about it on this podcast, the midseason swoon and things like that. Does this team, do the Spartans have the ability to flip the proverbial switch? And many people do believe this team does because of the high-end talent. I mean, when you got Miles Bridges, you got Jaren Jackson, you do believe they're going to figure it out, and you hope that they can take the opportunity to take the Big Ten tournament and really use it to home themselves because, remember, this is January. We're talking about a 1 regular season loss. We're talking about a team that, I know it's a big game, it's a marquee game. You never really want to lose to Michigan, but at the same time, sometimes a team like this has to have this adversity right now at the perfect time when you play good teams and have these losses so that in the end, if this propels Michigan State to the Final Four and even to a title game, because I can't realistically sit here and expect that this team is going to win it all, because when you got Duke there in that bracket, I'm scared shitless of Duke. I don't want to play them. I'd rather take the back end to a title without Duke, having them have someone else do the job, because I'm not confident that Michigan State can even compete with Duke, even in a big time game like the NCAA tournament. So, hey, if we take the back roads to win it all, I'll take it. But you ask me, do I think this team can flip the switch? I do believe they can. They'll fix this. They'll right the ship, because in basketball, when you look at what you see on the floor, sometimes when you cover it and you see what's going on, sometimes college kids just don't perform at the level they need to throughout a course of a 40-game season. It's not going to happen all the time. But in the end, the big thing you got to worry about is goal number 1, secure that number 1 seed in the Midwest. You want to play lesser opponents. You don't want to be facing an up-and-coming 2 or 3 seed that could upset you early on. You don't want to handle that. You want to be in a position of getting that number 1 seed, potentially playing at Little Caesars, having the region fall in your lap. But if you continue to play like this, and the big thing that concerns a lot of people is 7 of, I think, Michigan State's remaining 11 games in the conference are on the road. So it's going to be a tough test, but I do believe I'm going to buy on Michigan State still. I ain't selling. I do believe their ceiling is high, and I do believe that when the season shakes out, when they get to the tournament, I'm kind of thinking along the lines of Elite 8, Final 4. That's the ceiling for this team. Can they get that? Because the big thing is when they do get to the tournament, in any situation, when you watch a team get to the tournament and make their way through, you got to have some breaks. You got to play really well because the games are going to be close. It's going to come down to the final 4 minutes, who hits the big shots. And when you got Miles Bridges and Jaren Jackson, you hope that they turn it on and they say, okay, it's go time. And with that top-end talent, you do think that they can rise above some of these other teams. But would I be surprised if they lost early in the Sweet 16? No, I wouldn't be surprised at all. They got to step it up. They got to show what they can do the remainder of the season. But at the same time, I am also really high on Michigan because when you play basketball and you have the ability to put forth a system that looks like John Beilein's, and you can just go out there and roll guys out there and shoot threes like that, you're never out of a game. Just look at the Maryland game. You played terrible in that first half. Nothing was going in. You looked like you didn't belong in the gym. Second half, the three goes down. I even tweeted. Tweeted to somebody that's been on the podcast before. I said, look, see the three, make the three. It's an easy game, baby. And all of a sudden, the shots started falling, and Michigan was able to get such an advantage with that three-point shot. And now you read about it. They got practice facilities that just are tailored to help these kids continue to make threes. John Beilein's system is tailored to this game. You can take kids that are shooters that maybe are not as talented as what is there at Michigan State, but you can make threes at a clip like that. I like the system. They're a fun team to watch. They are actually a team that you can rally behind. But in the end, the big fear that everybody has with a team like John Beilein's, you go cold, bad night.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you're not hitting your shot, you're not going to win the game. It's what it comes down to. As far as Michigan State goes, I know there's a ton of smoke around this team right now, and I know there's some fire. But look, they're 16-3. They have a loss to Duke, and that was a really competitive game. They lost to Michigan, and they lost to Ohio State. Those are three really good teams.
Yeah.
All right? It's nothing to sit there and get too worried about. I think Izzo does get this corrected, and I think you're absolutely right. In the end, Izzo is an exceptional coach, and he will fix whatever errors he has made, and he will get this team motivated enough to come out and play every single game. And their stretch coming down, it's going to be a little bit difficult. 7 of their next 11, like you said, on the road. So you're going to really see what this team is made of. It's going to test their mettle. In the end, I'm still high on this team. I think this team has a great shot to make to the Final Four. It's just one of those things where it's been a couple games where they just haven't shown up. And Izzo's going to get it fixed because he always does. I just don't think this is the typical way Izzo wants to do things. But he is exceptional at taking a crisis, spinning it around, and making the team much better for it. Now, as far as Michigan goes, at this point, they're playing with house money. You know, they are playing an exceptional brand of basketball right now. You're right. They sat there and they went and played Rutgers, and they probably should have lost that game. But that was one of those games where you just played your in-state rival on the road. You then had to come home and you had to take care of business a day later. You just need to win that game. Win that game, survive in advance. That's a great test for what's going to happen when you get into the Big Ten tournament and when you get into the NCAA tournament. When you got to play games, when you got to play that second game, you know, where you play on a Friday and then you got to turn around and you got to play again on a Sunday. Survive in advance. It's a great test to that. And you're right, John Beilein's system is made for this game. And I see you over there smirking, and I don't know why you're smirking. What's going on? What's going on? What's running through your head right now?
Yeah,
I see you laughing at me. It's getting me nervous. I say something funny.
Because I'm a guy that you probably know is a fatalist that always thinks something bad's going to happen. Because now I cover Oakland, and I'm kind of now like the magic ball hit me. Right. What if Oakland gets like that 16 seed, and it's 1 versus 16, and it's Michigan State, Oakland, and the first time ever in the history of historydom in the tournament, Oakland plays Michigan State super tough, and forget it. Let's just take Oakland, and whoever's in the committee, take Oakland and put them not in the Midwest. I would love that. At first I was thinking, man, that'd be awesome if Michigan State and Oakland were in the same bracket, but what if Oakland's a 16 seed, Michigan State's a 1 seed?
Dude,
first round.
And you know what? Oakland plays a real similar style of basketball to what Michigan does.
You thought
they like to hit the three. They usually have some big guys where you can work the ball inside, but they love to hit the three.
Oh man, Michigan fans came out of the woodworks and just were hammering Michigan State, hammering Tom Izzo, hammering Miles Bridges. Imagine if Michigan State is the first 1 seed to lose. Woo! Oh, forget. Let's not think about it. Let's change the subject. What do you think the ceiling is for Michigan?
At this point right now, I think they got a great shot at making the Elite Eight. But look, they're hot right now. And you said it yourself. Once they cool down and that three's not going in, this team dries up and they're not that good. You know, so they depend on the three, they live on the three, and they die by the three. So as long as it's going in, they've got the sky's the limit. If they're not hitting the three ball, good luck. So I'm going to say Elite Eight right now with the way they're playing. I'm impressed by what's going on there. I really feel they got boned when they sat there and played Purdue. You take that loss out of it, geez Louise, man. They're on a roll, you know. They're just ripping and tearing. So,
and then if you want to look at the future, Michigan's bringing in some high-quality talent that can shoot the ball as well. If you want to listen to the podcast that we did with David DeJulius, comes out Saturday on Two Bad Hombres, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. A point guard right now that's shooting about 60% from the three, and is an individual that's playing really well for his high school squad and has come off of some performances this year where he scored 42, 49. He's played really well against high-quality opponents, including the likes of Clarkston. So
really mature, too. Like, I was so surprised. He sounds so mature for his age. To be a high school senior and sound like that, impressive.
David DeJulius, he knows what's up, and listen to that podcast. Tune in, Two Bad Hombres each and every Saturday. All right, let's take our first time out. We got to get to the stories regarding Matt Patricia. We're going to go on Matt Patricia watch right after this. Doc and Jock here for our host site, Podomatic.com. When Adam and I first started this project, we were looking for a great place to host all of our recorded audio, and thank goodness we found Podomatic. At this point in time, we've recorded 800 to 900 weekly podcasts, and we've only used one host site. Why do we use Podomatic? Because they're super easy, very friendly, great customer service. When we record a podcast, rant and rave, debate Detroit sports, rip Tom Izzo, rip John Beeline, rip the Detroit Lions organization, we can record our podcast and quickly upload it so that all of our supporters across the country and even overseas can find us. If you want to grow your network and you want to get in on this podcast game, you got to have a good host site. And Doc and Jock, Vito, Jerry, Steve, we're all going to recommend one host site and one host site alone, Podomatic.com. Yes, sir. The tide has come back to our favor, baby. Matt Patricia, after last week, we ranted and raved that he wanted to go to the Giants. This week, back at it, baby. It looks like, from the reports, that everything's kind of signed, sealed, delivered, ready to go because of the fact that reports are leaking out that the Lions have said and contacted the second-place candidates, the third-place candidate, and said, look, it ain't going to be you. So when those things happen, the agents are chirping and things like that. So by process of elimination, it would seem that Matt Patricia is the guy that's going to be standing there at the podium when it's time to announce who the next head coach is. And it sounds good.
Yeah, this all started on Sunday morning. Adam Schefter sat there and reported that it was believed that Patricia will be named the new head coach for the Detroit Lions. That was then followed up later on Sunday night by Albert Breer, who tweeted that the Lions had told other coaching candidates that they have their man and they were out of the running for the coaching vacancy here in Detroit. So then all this kind of starts to bubble up to the top, and you're like, all right, cool. Detroit's got their man. Patricia's basically off the market. And what it sounded like was Patricia went back home, thought about it, because it did sound and it appeared that he had both the Giants and the Lions to choose from. It was either the red or the blue pill, and he chose the blue pill, and he says, I like the Lions, and he wants to become the new Lions head coach, is what it sounds like. So by all of that taking place, on Monday, it's reported that the Giants are now hot on the Vikings OC, Pat Shurmur, for their new head coach, and the Colts and Titans are both zeroing in on Josh McDaniels for their new head coach. So you start checking off boxes, and you get down to process of elimination. All signs point to Matt Patricia being the new head coach. And if you're a Lions fan, this has to make you feel good. You have to be excited because two things here. One, you get a guy who everybody in the league is very, very high on. Last year, he went around and he interviewed for a couple head coaching vacancies, and some of the general managers turned around and said, this guy sounds like he could be the GM of the team, not the head coach of the team. So he has a great eye and a great idea of what talent is on this roster and what he needs to put on this roster. Now, you sit there and you work that out with Bob Quinn. I think you got two great minds in that front office. Also, it says to me that the Detroit Lions are now able, and they have enough bravado in this league to be able to go out and target the guy that they want and get the guy that they want. No more of this second fiddle crap. You know, you remember when Jim Caldwell was brought in, he was the number 2 guy. He wasn't your number 1 guy. So many times in the past have the Lions gone after a guy and have swung and missed and then had to settle. There's no settling here. We wanted Matt Patricia. We get Matt Patricia. He'll be coming in either when New England loses in the playoffs or when New England wins a Super Bowl. So one or the other, eventually he'll become and be named the new head coach of the Detroit Lions. The thing that I'm a little bit nervous about is I don't know if this is necessarily a good idea to go around telling all the other coaching candidates that, hey, you're off the list. You're no longer on the list, and we got our guy. I mean, the ink isn't even dry yet. You technically can't sign anything, and you can't really have any conversations about too much until the Patriots are done playing football.
Well, if you look at all the jobs, they're being filled. Giants got their man. The Colts have their man. The Titans potentially might make a play, but at the same time, you know that when you look at the landscape and all these jobs are opened and now filled, okay, you can put the puzzle together that Patricia's coming here. I don't think in that scenario that Bob Quinn would do that unless he absolutely knew.
I'm just an abused housewife at this point.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
Wouldn't that be great if he's like, no, I'm cool, I'm going to stay. They make him a great offer at New England. It's like, I'm going to stay as a defensive coordinator. I'm good. And they say, look, we can't just lose Josh McDaniels. If you want to play it out that way, we can't lose Josh McDaniels. Let's make Matt Patricia a higher paid guy than anybody else, the highest paid assistant in the history of the world, and then we say, this is the next head coach of the New England Patriots. Let him sit here. That would be hilarious.
Well, that's what I was thinking. So,
but then I think they would go to Vrabel right away. That's 1A and 1B.
I get it. But if you're in New England, right, and Belichick's your guy, and there's all this turmoil that's been swirling around the organization, wouldn't you want some type of a successor tree? Like if Belichick leaves, it's this guy. Don't you think that, I don't know, Robert Kraft should maybe go after Matt Patricia and say, hey, look, I don't want you to leave. Here's some more zeros at the end of your check. You are the next head coach in waiting. Wouldn't that seem like the smart thing to do? Especially for New England? I mean, look, but how much longer does Belichick want to do this?
But at the same time, now you look at it and you say, if Belichick is 65 and Tom Brady wants to go another 6-7 years, Belichick's going to go right there with him. He's like, dude, I'll just roll this out because if I get now,
I mean,
yeah,
you read the report by ESPN. It sounds like there's a lot of friction there.
It seems like there's a lot of holes there too. I don't believe that. You know what? If you win 6 Super Bowls, I think you can put all that stuff.
Winning cures all, huh?
Yeah, water under the bridge, and then you have an opportunity now with Matthew Stafford. I do think that the tough thing is that you're assuming that when Patricia takes over, that it's going to be with Tom Brady, and they're going to keep that train rolling. There's going to have to be a little bit of time of a rebuild. Where right now with Matt Patricia, there's probably a 4 or 5 year window where they're going to acquire talent. The Lions have a very cap-friendly situation. You got Matthew Stafford. So in terms of jumping in the boat and getting success really fast, I think Patricia has an opportunity now to come in and work with Bob Quinn and start his own mark, because at the same time, when you follow somebody like a Bill Belichick, there's probably a lot more room for error. There's a lot more room for judgment. How do you follow Bill Belichick where he can stroll into Detroit? All he's got to do literally is win one playoff game and he gets a parade. Matt Patricia drive. He'll have one playoff win.
Just one. That's all we need.
Heaven forbid we get 2 in one season.
So low.
Yes, if we get 2 in one season, he might be here for 17 years.
Win the NFC North. Hey, you're president of Michigan.
Vice president of operations.
We'll boot the governor out and we'll make a whole new position for you. You're the president of the state of Michigan.
Right, we'll get calls and tweets that say, but we won 2 games in the postseason. Yeah, you lost to the Packers, or you lost to the Saints, or you lost to the Seattle Seahawks 49-3 in the NFC title game. But they won 2 playoff games this year. Like, no, look what he did. Patricia makes all the bad mistakes in the title game. That would be, if we want to set the ceiling for Matt Patricia in terms of realistically, the ceiling would be just get a couple wins every year in the postseason and don't mess up in the big games, because that would be something if the next step is the guy that doesn't get us to the Super Bowl, but a guy that teases us even more. Like, the biggest tease would be if we get Matt Patricia, he comes here, does a good job, but we get the next Andy Reid, where we don't get to the Super Bowl, we just consistently get to the playoffs and get to the NFC title game, but we don't get over that hump.
You're super good in the regular season, and then you're extra mediocre in the playoffs.
Exactly.
I don't think that's going to be Matt Patricia.
That might be the realistic starting point. That might be the realistic starting point.
That might be season 1. I'll give you. I'll give you season 1.
Season 1.
I'll give you season 1. All right. But I think Matt Patricia is so intelligent. By all accounts, everything that I have read, and I've read everything I could possibly read until I've gone cross-eyed about this guy. All right. Everything I read, he has a mind for the game, and he is so intelligent. He has such a great way to be able to look at either the talent that he has or talent that he wants, or understand what he needs, and either A, go out and get that, or B, tailor his system to adjust to fit what he's got going. If you look at what the Patriots have done defensively, now he's been calling the defense, I think, since 2007, 2009-ish, somewhere right around there. You look at what the Patriots defense has done in the time that he has been the defensive coordinator. They have lost a lot of high-priced guys, and they have basically done this with all smoke and mirrors. Just low-level guys that they go and they dig up off their couch and they plug them in. And the thing is, they give up a ton of yards. Yards left, right, and center, all right? And that's my new phrase, apparently, because it's like the 9th time I've said it on this show, all right? They give up a ton of yards, but they don't give up any points. And that defense it just capitalizes on turnovers and turns turnovers into points for now will be the Lions.
But now, cuz there's a force that's greater than the NFL, greater than Roger Goodell, greater than Matt Patricia, greater than the Patriots.
Roger Goodell.
Yes. This force is called the Lions organization. The big question is, can Matt Patricia overcome whatever it is with the Lions? Because we joke, coaches come here to die. Coaches come here and start taking the wind. Coaches come here, start fielding 9 men. Coaches come here, start telling us to check the report every 5 days. Coaches come here, maybe shave their beards. You never know what's going to happen. And so the Lions organization is something that has to be taken into account. Can Matt Patricia come here and actually be Matt Patricia when he gets to the Detroit Lions? Because I'm sitting here and I'm going, you know what? Oh my goodness, Josh McDaniels hit the jackpot. He'll probably get to the playoffs faster. He'll do more things. Oh my goodness, Wilkes is going to go to the Giants and do some things. Oh my goodness, Vrabel's going to wait out the Green Bay job. He'll come here in the division and just completely destroy the Lions because
you're an abused wife too.
The Lions organization is something that now people are talking about because you see it around the league now. The Jaguars, they get one executive. All of a sudden now they're in the AFC title game. One executive. Whereas the Lions have committed 2 and 3 regimes. You've committed boatload of money to your quarterback. And now
if going by playoff wins, Blake Bortles is a much better quarterback than Matthew Stafford will ever be.
Everybody knows it's the Lions organization. It's a force that's greater than Star Wars. It's a force greater than anything. So if he comes here,
Darth Vader doesn't have anything on the Lions.
The Lions organization is a force that can't be reckoned with, and sometimes they overpower coaches, and you think you're talking like you're getting the Matt Patricia from New England. When he comes here, it's different being a coordinator than it is being a coach where you got to manage the other side too.
Right.
And it's looking like he might be saddled with an offensive coordinator. It doesn't look like that the talk is that Jim Bob Cooter is going to be blown out. So I think the first boss move he could make is to blow out Jim Bob Cooter. Come in here and be like, no, I'm getting a new staff because great, Stafford was at this level, but in the end, there's no playoff marks to show for it.
I agree with you 100%.
Blow him out. And
I don't think
start off on the right foot.
You keeping a coach, unless you're so in love with him and what he can bring and what he can do. Right, exactly. And that's the thing. It's not like the guy knows how to run the ball or be able to put a scheme together to run the ball. So why are you going to keep him? It doesn't make sense to me. So I'm right there with you. Absolutely 100%. Look, if he comes in here, he needs to have full autonomy. The whole thing is the same thing with Bob Quinn. When Bob Quinn came in, we wanted him to have full autonomy. He ends up keeping Jim Caldwell. I think in the end it works out, right? He keeps Caldwell for 2 years? And in the end, he gets the guy that he really, really wanted, which was Matt Patricia. So does Matt Patricia have his eye on some coordinator out there, some guy out there, and think maybe, you know what? Hey, this is the guy that I want. Maybe I've got to keep Jim Bob Cooter for a season or two. It satiates Matt Stafford. He doesn't get the job done, and you can blow him out after a season. I don't know. I think it would be a boss move, though, if he came in and was like, look, I don't want that guy. He's not going to fit what I'm looking to do. And, hey, Matt, you're going to have to sit there and deal with it. Tough marbles. You're a good enough quarterback where I can put you in any system and you're going to thrive. So just hold on to your hat and we're going to get a guy in here. That would be the boss move. That would be exceptional.
Early offseason, I want to talk about one thing with you, though. Do you think, because it kind of ties into something we got to talk about, many people in town are kind of around the water cooler looking at Ziggy Ansah and going, do we need this guy back? Do we need this guy? And then you look at what the Patriots do. They always knew their decisions would always come back and basically result in a fruitful decision. They never really let somebody go and then just turn around and blew up the league. They always let the guy go at the right time. They got the juice out of the guy. They got the best part of him. And then when it was time to let him go, they did. And so we're all looking at what's going on with Ziggy Ansah and going, man, he's going to command a boatload of money if he stays here. Do you franchise him? He's been injury prone the last couple of years. And then you say, well, the Patriot way is to blow him out. Is that the right thing to do, is to look at the Patriot way? And would you bring back Ziggy Ansah if you're Bob Quinn?
I think if you are the Detroit Lions,
I think Patriot way means you blow him out.
Well, if you're going to build like the Patriots do, I think it only works for New England, right? And that's because you've got Bill Belichick as the complete brain trust, right? He's the guy who lets the information in, lets the information out. Everything's got to pass through him. He decides what we need, what we don't need. You're telling him everything, and you know all the stats, but there are certain things that Belichick is looking for, and he knows whether or not it's good or it's bad and whether or not to let a guy go or to keep a guy. I think for this team has to have the thumbprint, not necessarily of the Patriots, but have the thumbprint of Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia. And whether that means you're going to sit there and you're going to blow a guy like Ziggy Ansah out, or you're going to turn around and franchise him, or you're going to sit there and sign him to some type of a 4-year extension where he's going to get paid fat money. It's what they deem is acceptable. I don't think that you can mimic what goes on in New England because it's never worked anywhere else. You look at Scott Pioli in Kansas City. He brought in Romeo Crennel. How'd that work out? Not very good. You go around the league and you look at some of these head coaches that have come from New England. The only guy who's really had some monicum of success is Bill O'Brien in Houston, and he still has a below 500 record. So I don't think you can do what the Patriots do necessarily. You can take a lot of the things that they do well and try to incorporate them here, and I think it'll work out much better for you in the long run. As far as Ziggy Ansah goes, I think he's done. I don't think he has anything left. Every single year now, it seems like he has some type of brutal injury that derails his season. Or he starts off extra slow because he gets hurt in the preseason and never really comes around and gets healthy by the end of the season. Or it starts in the middle of the season and then he's basically washed up by the end of the season. I don't think you can give that type of money and make that kind of investment for a guy like Ziggy Ansah at this stage in his career. You are probably going to have to do something like the Patriots do where you blow a guy out and now you're going to try to fit pieces in and get guys to pick up that slack. And whether it be two guys doing it, whether it be you adjusting your defense, and here's something we haven't even talked about. Are they going to switch to a 3-4? Are they going to continue to run a 4-3? We don't even know what type of defense they're going to run. And if you're going to switch to a 3-4, a guy like Ziggy Ansah isn't necessary anymore. You let him go because you're going to change the way your front line works. Haloti Ngata might be a guy that you bring back because he fits ideally as a nose tackle in a 3-4. He's a big dude who stuffs runs up in the front. He can usually demand a double and a triple team when he's playing nose tackle because he's just there as a blob, absorbing, the tackle or the guards and the center. So I think there's a lot more that has to go into this. And right now it's all speculation. That's all we can do is speculate. But I think in the long run, it probably would be a wise decision for this team to let go of a guy like Ziggy Ansah.
News at the wire. Todd Haley. News has been kind of trickling out that he and Big Ben just kind of don't see eye to eye.
There's a history there.
Todd Haley's a yeller and seems like Big Ben's a little bit sensitive to that, doesn't want to hear that nonstop. And it seems like that Todd Haley, not fired, his contract ran out, and news is broken earlier today that Todd Haley's not going to be brought back. He's not going to be re-signed. You make the call to him.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Do you make the call to him? Because I think I would. I think I'd give him a call and I'd say, hey, come in, let's have a talk. I want to see where your mind's at and what you think about this. Because if you look at the way that offense runs, it's explosive. It is so explosive. If you look at, I know they lost to the Jags, and I know they got off to a really slow start, and I put most of that on Tomlin, but if you look at what that offense does, they sit there, they stretch the field, they throw it up, they're able to run the ball. There's a lot of good things that offense does, and I think you can mimic it here in Detroit.
And then maybe you then have inroads to bring in his running back. Le'Veon Bell seems to be disgruntled. We don't want the man retiring.
You can bring him home, right?
Yeah.
You maybe get a hometown discount there, right?
Do you hit the home run and go for it? Do you give him draft picks? Do you give similar deals that Cleveland has done or other teams have done, like the Rams?
You don't have to give him anything. He's free. You bring Haley in. Oh, you're talking about Le'Veon Bell.
Le'Veon Bell.
Well, depends. Are they going to franchise him?
2 first rounders. Do you swing for Le'Veon Bell? Should the Lions, let's play general manager now, should the Lions swing for the fences and get Le'Veon Bell here?
I'm not giving up 2 first rounders. Not for a guy who has this much wear and tear already on his career.
How old is he now?
What is his 4th year in the league? Hold on, let me look it up.
Yeah, we'll look it up.
I got some stuff going on here.
Because, Jason and I kind of talked about it a little bit as well. We said, look, maybe we're going to make that move because we're going to talk about it next Monday as a tease, but we're going to put together an offer to bring Saquon Barkley here. We're going to move up in the draft. We're putting together a deal.
That would be a guy I would love to bring.
Jason and I are putting together a deal, and we're going to try to figure it out, but it's going to involve basically mortgaging the future forever.
Mortgaging forever.
We're mortgaging the future, but we're offering the Browns, or we're offering a team that we think is going to take Saquon Barkley. We're going to look at some mock drafts, and we're going to put together an offer. Stay tuned, but we're making a move. But if you want to make a move, maybe mortgaging half of the future in the next 2 or 3 years for Le'Veon Bell, seems like you can get 3 years out of him.
So Bell's 25.
25 years old, bro.
So he's still young. But he's had what? He's had a good 5 years in Pittsburgh already, right? Probably the season that he toted the ball the most. It was actually this past season. He held the ball 321 times he rushed. That's a lot. That's a lot of wear and tear on a guy. Do you know what I'm saying? And I think it's like 340 after like 340 carries. No running back has ever come back and had a productive season. I don't know. That's a lot of wear and tear on a guy. I'm not giving up 2 first-round picks. I will contemplate giving you a second and a third, and then probably another year removed, maybe either a second or a third. I'd give you 3 picks for him, but that's a lot. And then he's got to come in and he's got to actually want to sign a deal. So there's a whole lot going on there. So you're going to have to be in touch with Le'Veon. Oh, man, that's a messy situation. But he could be your running back of the future. And if you could sit there, if you could promise me that you are going to get 5 years of production out of Le'Veon that mimic what he's done in Pittsburgh, yeah, I would probably give you whatever you're asking for. Do you know what I'm saying? But you've got to promise me that it's gonna. I'd have to get the same amount of production, and I don't know if you're gonna get that. I just don't know.
Okay, I'm asking you now to get your 8 ball out one more time. Okay, because it's very important.
But before we go to the 8 ball, I want to ask you a question. Do you think Patricia comes in here, and do you think he changes the way he is, the way he looks, the way he coaches, his demeanor on the sideline? I mean, I know a lot of talk has been talked about, him being a clean-shaven guy, his actual appearance, because he wears the baggy hoodie, he wears the backwards hat with the pencil, he's got the big bushy beard where a bird might fly out of it. Do you think he changes his appearance at all? And do you want him to? Because the way I look at it,
same guy.
I want the same guy. What has made you a genius over there, I want what makes you a genius here as well. I don't need you to change. I don't want you to be different. I like the blue-collar look. Detroit's a blue-collar town. We're guys who walk around with a sweat rag in our back pocket and a wrench in the other. You usually have grease and dirt underneath your fingernails. I want a guy like that. I'd love to sit down and go out to drink with a guy like that, and I'd like to talk to him about his beard and how he grooms that, because that thing is weird and gnarly and huge. But I don't want the guy to change. I want the same guy. When he comes for his press conference, I want him showing up in a Lions hoodie or maybe a Lions tracksuit, and I want him to have a backwards hat, and I want him to have a big old mane of a beard. I don't want it different. I want the same thing that makes you great there, and I want it, whatever's going to make you great here, just keep doing it.
Absolutely. Do what you got to do. I don't think he's going to come in here with a clean shaven. If he does, you're like, oh boy, things are changing. I don't think so. I think you come in here full on, wear the suit with the beard, and just come here and be the guy. You're a defensive guy. You're a stud. Come in here and do what you got to do. It's really going to be important that you're comfortable and that you get the ball rolling, because 2018, most people are not going to give the Lions a pass because a lot of people liked and supported Jim Caldwell. You're not going to get that pass. So you got to come in here and handle your business. So the question is, with that 8 ball, we know he's going to be signed on. It's just a foregone conclusion. There's outside of a miracle, I don't see that Matt Patricia is not going to be here. But we're going to swirl that 8 ball around. We got to ask that question. All right.
Let me get it out. All right, I got it.
All right, you got it ready to go?
Yep.
Swirl it up, and let's ask, will Matt Patricia take the Detroit Lions at least to the NFC title game in his regime?
It says concentrate and ask again. All right, so let me do it again. All right, ask the question one more time. I'm shaking it here. I'm shaking.
Will Matt Patricia, the newest head coach of the Detroit Lions, will he bring the Detroit Lions at least to the NFC title game in his regime? Shake that bad boy up.
It says you may rely on it.
Oh,
what?
It's happening.
Look, I love this magic 8 ball, bro.
Okay, this is a positive 8 ball.
This is a positive 8 ball.
Okay.
I love this magic 8 ball.
Because I think my ceiling is going to be we got the next Andy Reid. We get him to the post.
So?
I think.
I don't believe that.
But that's not logic. That's based on the emotion. That's based on what we've seen with the Lions. He'll get us to that level. We'll tease us some more. Get us to the postseason, but maybe make those big mistakes as the head coach. Maybe get us a win or two here and there. He'll do just enough to keep getting that extension. Give us that little bit of hope. Then maybe get us to that title game, and then you make that key blitz that you're not supposed to, and you've seen that the team has responded well. All of a sudden, you decide to blitz at the worst possible time. A player goes for 90 yards, and it costs the Lions. It's based on Lions lore, baby. Remember, I'm giving the force with the Lions organization, so I wait. The Lions organization and the toxicity and the curse that's out there, I give them a 60-40 edge over Matt Patricia. But he comes in strong. I would have gave, when they hired Jim Caldwell, I would have gave the Lions organization force 90-10. That there was no way Jim Caldwell was going to overcome the Lions organization force.
I think Jim Caldwell has done a great job laying a foundation for Matt Patricia to come into. And I think Bob Quinn being at the helm, and you have both these guys who see the game the same way, or at least that's what it seems like. They see the game the same way, and from what it sounds like, Patricia will have no problem voicing his opinion. So if he wants something, he'll tell Quinn, and he'll explain why. And by all accounts, Patricia is an intelligent guy who's got a brain not just for the game, but to be able to build rocket ships, apparently. So you've got an intelligent guy as your head coach. He seems like he is I don't necessarily want to say he's a player's coach, but he has a great relationship with his players, and it sounds like those guys respect him. So if he's able to go out and find a offensive and a defensive coordinator who fit what he wants to do, I see no reason this team can't be competing for the NFC North title, and I don't see any reason why this team can't be playing in the NFC Championship game within the next 2 to 3 seasons.
Okay, so let's see what happens. I hope maybe Matt Patricia can come through and break the force. Let's see what
how
happens.
great would it be to actually get a coach who stays here, like Bill Belichick, right? Like there's Belichick's never going anywhere. You know what I'm saying? He's got a spot in New England unless he wants to leave or unless Kraft gets absolutely tired of him. And if that's the case, he'll probably just say, you know what, I'm cool, and ride off into the sunset and go and fish because he likes to fish. He likes to go fish for, marlins, I think, down in the Gulf or whatever. But the guy will just roll out and it'll be whatever. How great would it be to be able to have a coach for, say, 10 years?
Yeah, that'd be nice.
It'd be awesome, wouldn't it?
It'd be nice.
You would
to
know
have
what the
some
hell to
hope.
do with yourself.
Before we take a break, a couple tweets come in here regarding our thoughts playing general manager. Crafty Lefty gets in, no, love Bell, but you never, ever overspend on running back and wide receiver. The Respected Madman, huge Detroit sports podcast supporter, love reading his tweets. I'm going to say no, dude got 400-plus touches this year, which also looked to a decline in his play. So far,
similar to what I was saying there, where there's a threshold where you touch the ball too much, your body just can't handle it, so you just break down and get beat up.
Yeah, it's really fascinating what Pittsburgh did there. You gave up a ton of points, and by all accounts, Tomlin's a defensive guy, and Todd Haley did a really good job, looked innovative, and kept that ball rolling. He's out. Man, that goes to show you the coach and the quarterback, they got some clout over there. Maybe outside of reason, that might not be the right move.
Think about this, right? Tomlin steps in. He's got an elite defense, and that's what Pittsburgh's been known for, is having an elite defense. That defense is shit now. Absolute garbage. All right, the only thing you got going for you is an elite offense. You're going to blow out your OC? Are you serious? And your quarterback is probably going to hang out for maybe another year. He's not even sure. He's kind of wishy-washy. If he has a bad poop today, he's probably going to retire. For real? What are you doing, Pittsburgh? What's going on?
All right, a final timeout. We'll come back. We'll play a round of Jock Jams. I got a lot of questions, a lot of great things going on in the world of Detroit sports and nationally, and we'll peek into that right after this. Thanks, everybody, for your continued support. Each and every week, we get a chance to check the downloads, subscribers. Everything is trending upward, and that's thanks to your fine support. Free and easy way to help us keep the microphones hot, the lights on here in the Sterling Heights studio. Go visit our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. It's the hub of the operation. It's where you can go to see what show airs when. You can click through all the banner links, and every time you make an online purchase, if you're prone to shop online, thank you so much. We greatly appreciate it. If you just make one quick stop at DetroitSportsPodcast.com before you take care of all your online shopping needs. DetroitSportsPodcast.com. Thank you so much for your continued support. We always greatly appreciate it.
Dude, real quick, I was looking at numbers for, numbers for defensive ends, and if you're going to pay Ziggy Ansah, if you're going to franchise him, you're looking at anywhere between $13 to $14.5 million for one season of whatever he gives you. That's a lot of money. I don't think you sign him to that. I don't think he's worth it.
Yeah, I don't think so either. The problem is, though, he got a ton of production in 3 games. It's up to Bob Quinn.
But in 3 games, though.
Yeah,
where were you for the other 13?
Exactly. That's the big question that Bob Quinn's got to answer.
Game seasons.
I think Bob Quinn will make the right choice either way.
I think so, too.
He'll get value out of it. All right, this is what we call Jock Jams. I got several great questions lined up for the Jock, and I know he's chomping, ready to deliver in what we call Jock Jams. We'll stick with the Lions one more beat here because ESPN recently regraded each NFL team's offseason moves, and the Lions went down from a B- to a C+. You think that's fair or foul? Rankings from ESPN regarding the Lions' moves.
I think it's fair, all right? But I think there's got to be a caveat with it, all right? Because if you go back and you remember, they brought in Ricky Wagner, they brought in TJ Lang, and you've been very outspoken on both those guys, and you've been very disappointed with the production that you've gotten out of those guys. If you go back and you remember when they were brought in, those guys were supposed to be the number one guys in the free agency class in those positions, and those were positions that the Lions needed. They ended up dealing with some injuries, and at one point in the season, the only way that the Lions could run the ball was to the right side. They couldn't run to the left because they had no left tackle. They didn't end up getting their left tackle until what, week 10? So I think it's fair because the production that you got, you expected more from it. All right. But looking at the moves in total, I think I don't think they were bad moves. I just don't think you got the production that you expected out of them. And if you go back and you look at his draft, because this, I believe this includes his draft as well. His draft was pretty decent. You got a Pro Bowl return man out of it. And that's something that we haven't been able to say around here for a long time. Teez Tabor finally came on late in the season, and he played pretty decent as a nickel. I think next year he'll probably be your starting corner. And you look at your linebacker, you end up getting two guys who were able to fill in. You know, you got a starter, and then you got a rotational guy in your linebacking core, and I think that bodes well for this team. And I'm really impressed with the tight end, Michael Robinson. I think he's going to be a nice asset to have going on down the line. Probably not next year, but in year 3, I expect more production from him. So I think overall, I think it's absolutely fair, but I think you're in a better place now because of this past offseason.
Do you see Bob Quinn making better moves this offseason that will pay better dividends upcoming in the next couple seasons?
With Matt Patricia coming in, if Matt Patricia comes in, I think the two of them will work together. And I think the moves that are made will be tailored to what Matt Patricia wants. So absolutely, I think they'll be better. And I think Matt Patricia is such a good head coach that even if the moves don't necessarily pay off, he'll be able to put the guys in places and move those pieces around the chessboard to where they look a lot better than what they actually were. So again, smoke and mirror to get you through, to get you wherever you got to go.
Bro, I texted you and I'm like, wow, what great football action we have watched in this postseason.
It was an amazing weekend.
I feel like just a couple good weeks of watching the good teams play kind of washes away all the bad stuff that we see with the Detroit Lions. And so it's making me think, yeah, maybe not root for another team, but I just have to follow another team and follow some good teams and watch what they do. You know, teams like the Rams or teams like the Patriots, just watch their games more often because it cleanses the soul when you sit and watch the Detroit Lions and what they do. But sticking with football, the NFL Conference Championship games are this weekend. The Vikings will travel to Philadelphia to play the Eagles, and the New England Patriots are going to host the surprise team of the entire NFL, the Jacksonville Jaguars. Who's the Jock got playing for all the glory in this year's Super Bowl?
I want to go with the NFC game first. That Minnesota-Philly game, I think it's going to be great. I think Minnesota has so much going for it, though. They have got a really good offense. And you've seen that when they were able to sit there and pull out a last-minute touchdown to win that game against the Saints. And they've got a very good defense. Philadelphia, I still have some question marks with Nick Foles under center. I'm not sure how I feel about that. Yeah, they were able to win this past weekend and get by. But, man, that game was really, really, really close. I think Minnesota ends up beating Philadelphia at home to go on to play the Super Bowl in their own stadium, be the first team to ever do that. And I think that they'll end up taking on the New England Patriots. Now, the Jacksonville Jaguars have an exceptional defense, and that was on display against the Steelers. I think that defense can be had, though. The one thing New England does is they find your strength, and they turn it into a weakness, and they find your weakness, and they exploit that even more. And I think New England's going to have a little bit of a tough road here against this Jacksonville defense, but I don't think the Jags have enough offensive power to overpower the New England Patriots, and I think the Patriots end up winning by a field goal. So in the end, you're going to have Minnesota taking on the Patriots, and Minnesota will be at home hosting the Super Bowl and playing in their own dome. It'll set up to be an exceptional Super Bowl.
Ooh, I can't wait for this Sunday. I think it's going to be two great games. Don't sleep on that Jags defense. I do believe that they have an opportunity better than most people are giving them with that defense. I feel like that's an opportunistic defense that can take advantage of the Patriots if needed. So watch out. I would not be surprised if the Jacksonville Jaguars end up in the Super Bowl, but logically speaking, you don't think that Tom Brady's going to succumb to this. But remember, there's a man swirling around that Jaguar organization that's had success versus the Patriots, and that's Tom Coughlin, a man wise beyond his years, and the dude can do some things, had success with the Giants, and so you know he's pumping in some information that could help the team.
The two times the Patriots lost their Super Bowls, it was to who? the Giants.
You got it.
So
all right. We got to do it. I know I seen a funny-ass tweet in regards to the meteor. A young lady, Catherine Slonskis, former reporter, I believe, for Bless You Boys. I believe she took on other tasks and she left, but she got off probably a great blast. She said, man, the whole coverage and the story of the meteor that hit, on Tuesday is going to be way more exciting than anything going on in 2018 with any of the Detroit teams. And I'm like, oh, I thought it was funny. It was hilarious. But at the same time,
accurate.
It's accurate. It's tough sometimes to get up and be hopeful for all of these teams. But in circling back and talking about the Red Wings and Pistons, which team has been more perplexing? Because we're left scratching our head watching, the Pistons and Red Wings swing wildly and play inconsistently, having stretches where they play really good and get points and score a bunch and play good defense. And then you have a stretch where the Red Wings are losing, not playing well, and the Pistons are not playing defense. Why? Why are these teams, why are the Pistons and Red Wings so inconsistent?
I think what's been more perplexing for me has just been the Red Wings. Like, you sit there and you travel to Pittsburgh, you host, the Penguins host you, and you end up just getting shelled, right? You just get absolutely manhandled up and down, and then you go to Chicago and you beat the pants off the Blackhawks to then come home and play Dallas and just get smoked at home. Like, it makes no rhyme or reason how this team plays, how this team wins, and how this team loses. I just don't get it. I'm absolutely floored at how they play and what they're doing out there. I don't know why it's this way. It just makes me scratch my head. As far as the Pistons go, if Andre Drummond doesn't want to show up and doesn't want to play, that team's not going to win. And this team has shown that it has the capabilities to beat the best teams in all of the association when they show up and they play night in and night out. The problem is they don't play night in and night out. They don't give the same effort every single game. And if you don't give the same effort every single game, you're not talented enough and you're not good enough to overcome any deficiencies that any one player is going to have. You're already dealing with injuries. So now why are you going to make it worse when your multi-billion-dollar man, the guy who you have built your team around, doesn't want to show up and only gives you 3 points against an awful Charlotte team? You have to show up every single game, and you've got to play the same exact way every single time you take the court. Otherwise, you're not going to win. You're not good enough. You're not LeBron. You're not what Golden State has. Golden State can have 3 guys take a night off, and they still have enough talent on that roster to win any game against anybody. You're not Kyrie and the Celtics. You're not any of these teams. You're a team that in the beginning of the season, everybody looked at the schedule and penciled you in for maybe the 6th spot. Maybe the 6th spot. Then you got really hot when the season started because you started playing really, really well because you showed up and you're like, hey, we're going to take some pride in the way we do things and the way we play, and we're going to go out there and we're going to show these guys that we can hang with them. And you got hot and you smoked some really good teams. You beat them, and you beat them convincingly, and you look good. And then everybody was like, hey, maybe this team will be able to get home court advantage, and maybe they'll get a 4th seed. And right now, you're struggling to maintain the 8th seed. Are you serious? That's because you don't show up because you play inconsistent. And when your coach sits there and bitches you out about it, he has every right to. So I don't want to hear this, we just wish Stan Van would stop yelling at us. Well, show up and play. He won't yell. The Red Wings, I've got no idea. I really don't. If there was one thing I could put it on, I don't even know where I could begin. I really don't. Honestly, who I feel bad for? I feel bad for a guy like Athanasiou. This is a guy who wanted to be on this team. Him and Ken Holland had a difference at what his value meant to this team. He ends up signing a contract in the middle of the season and comes into this crap storm, and he's basically outplaying his contract right now. He's one of the best guys you have on this team. And at the end of the year, he's going to be a free agent. If I'm Athanasiou, do I want to come back to this? I'm probably going to Ken Holland's office saying, hey, trade me. I don't want to be here anymore. This is awful. And I don't know what is wrong with the Red Wings right now. I can't explain it. I can't even put it into a nutshell for you and be like, look, the issue is this, because they're all over the place. You sit there and you get manhandled in Pittsburgh, and then you turn around within 24 hours, you're playing in Chicago, and you're shutting out the Blackhawks. And look, Pittsburgh's not a very good team, and Chicago's not a very good team, and Dallas is all right. But then you come home and you get smoked by Dallas 4-2. What's going on here? You can't explain it. It's unexplainable. I don't know if it's effort. I don't know if they're tuning out the coach. I don't know if it's the goaltending. I don't know if it's the defense. I have no idea what it is at this time. It is so many different things that it could possibly be. It's just this team, there has to be a shakeup.
Okay, now everybody looks and everybody debates regarding, okay, we see the inconsistent play, we see the lack of talent. All right, where do you go next? Do you sell? Do you add? People are talking about the Pistons. Maybe people are talking and writing about the Pistons, maybe even mortgaging the future to bring on talent because Stan Van might be in a win-now mode, being that he's only got 1 year left on his deal. The Red Wings, we kind of know where they stand, but I think for both teams, in my opinion, you probably would be it'd be really advantageous to take a serious look at selling. But what do you think? Should both of these teams consider being massive sellers at the trade deadlines?
Absolutely. Because where you're at right now, if you're the Pistons, you're like a middle of the road mediocre team. If you're not somewhere in the top 3 or 4, good luck. The teams that are up there, they're going to crush you when you get to the playoffs, if you get to the playoffs. And you don't want to sit there and limp in as a 7 or 8 seed, and you probably don't even want to be a 6 seed this season. So good luck getting into the playoffs and trying to do something. So absolutely. Look, Tobias Harris is about to be a free agent. The guy's going to deserve a max contract. Do you have the money to pay him? The answer is no, you don't. You've got Reggie Jackson floating around out there, and you've tried a couple different times over the past couple seasons to trade him. Nobody wants him. What are you going to do with him? We've already talked about how this team operates much better when Ish Smith is your point guard. Andre Drummond is a guy who you built this team around, and you gave him a max contract. And boy, that's blowing up in your face right now because he's inconsistent. I was really impressed with him for taking the time and showing up and putting in the work to get better at his free throws. But there are some games where he's a non-factor. And you can't pay a guy that much money and have him be a non-factor. And then Avery Bradley. We were talking about Avery Bradley to start the season. Like, what are they going to do? Are they going to be able to re-sign him? If you lose Tobias, do you go and invest whatever money you were going to give to Tobias and Avery Bradley? Again, you're at a spot this season where you've got too many guys' contracts coming due, and there's no way you can re-sign all of them. So what do? Best bet, trade off the pieces that you have, get some different commodities in here, and you've got to hit those marks in the draft. You can't have any more of these Stan Van Gundy drafts where he's picking guys that he thinks he likes, and it turns out that they're nowhere near guys who get picked later in the draft. You can't have this anymore. Too many swings and misses in the NBA draft for Stan Van Gundy. And then as far as the Red Wings go, this is a team where, and this is a league where you're benefited if you don't make the playoffs and you don't win games. You need to get in that lotto and you need to get a top 5 pick. If you can get a top 5 pick in the NHL, you can do some things. This isn't like it was before where Ken Holland could go out and he could sit there and scout all of Russia, all of Norway and Finland, and scout the Czech Republic. Everybody's doing it now. It's a global league. Everybody has scouts all over the place. You can't go out and you can't get a guy like a Sergei Fedorov or a Pavel Datsyuk somewhere between the 5th and 7th round. It's not happening. It just doesn't work that way anymore. Everybody knows what kind of talent's out there and what kind of talent's playing in these major junior leagues across the world. So you're going to have to give up some assets, get some draft picks, and then you know what you can do? You can turn around, take those draft picks. If there's a guy on another team that you really like, go trade for that guy. Otherwise, sit there and win the draft. Do what you got to do. Win the draft. And I think Ken Holland's gone after the season anyways, and he should be.
How much are you invested? How much are you watching here and there? Because it's tough sometimes. I mean, literally, I'm watching the Wings, and they're playing okay. I mean, missing some chances. They're playing the Stars. It's okay. It's kind of entertaining. You want to see Larkin. You want to see Athanasiou speed. You want to see kind of how the goaltenders are playing. All of a sudden, the meteor hit, and all hell broke loose on Twitter. And I'm like, you know what? I was more seriously interested in that than the Wings.
Do you realize that if you can find a chunk of that meteor floating around?
$1 million.
$1 million,
My wife told me, like, stop working. Don't do the podcast with Adam. Go find a meteor.
Okay.
She said, wait.
I don't blame her.
Right?
Crap.
So that's where I'm at right now, where it's like passively on. I'm interested, but not so much. Like, not interested in tweeting about it or following. It's like, it's up and down, but I do think that, maybe when the time comes and Ken Holland is gone, I think my interest will be renewed. But right now, you just kind of feel like the Wings are not playing to their potential, neither are the Pistons. You feel like with better coaches,
both
slightly better.
Struggling.
Exactly.
It's
tough to watch and pay attention. But
I'm right there with you, man. I watched, I'd say maybe 75% of that Pittsburgh game, and I watched 80% of that Chicago Blackhawk game for the Red Wings. and I didn't even bother tuning into the Dallas game. I had no interest. I think I was watching SmackDown. I'd much rather watch wrestling. I'd rather watch a fake sport or sports entertainment than watch something real. You know, and like I'm following the game along on my phone. I was like, well, I made the right choice because they didn't bother showing up, so why am I going to bother to show up as a fan?
And I think we should pay attention, too, because I think Stan Van's getting a little bit more ornery, and I think it's tough, too, because you got the guy with the keys.
He's in a tough spot,
Yeah.
and it's a spot that he made for himself.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, who wants to be the head coach and the president? You know, like, are you going to fire yourself? So I'm sure you got some job security there, but you've got to make all those decisions, all of them. And we've talked about this before. Is Stan Van Gundy a better coach, or is he a better president? I think he's probably a better coach, and he should leave the presidenting to somebody else.
Yes, I think that's probably the logistical thing to do, the logical thing to do, because of the fact that Donovan Mitchell's coming to town. You're going to see what he's able to do, and you see the draft, and we talked about it on the radio. It's just Stan Van's ability to bring and draft quality people, not the best. It's really sad.
What do you think about them bringing Kay Felder in?
I thought it was good.
On
Good
a two-way
move.
contract.
I feel like he can develop in Grand Rapids, maybe live out a dream a little bit, but in terms of long-term future, I just think that he needs a little bit more. I think that sometimes maybe just your peak is not just good enough to stay in the league. Just right there, maybe just good enough to play in the D League, but in terms of competing regularly against bigger dudes, it's really tough in the NBA. It's really hard to stay on these rosters.
He's a guy who has a ton of talent. He just might be a little bit too small.
Yep.
And if you're a smaller guy, you've got to have a lot more talent than the next guy up.
Yep.
And he seems like he's got a lot of talent. He just not enough to get over that hump. It'll be interesting to see if he can sit there and make his way back up to play on the Pistons roster and actually contribute. Always liked him when he played at Oakland. He was a great player to watch, fun follow, and it'll be interesting to see if he can make a dream come true.
Okay, great podcast, sir. Episode 232 in the books. Awesome stuff. I enjoyed the conversation. Real fun podcast. Thank you, everybody, for your continued support. You can find Adam at AdamRSTROZ. Find us on the network at Detroit Podcast. Thank you so much for your interaction. It'll be a fun time, baby. Go NFL. I'm going to look forward to watching on the couch this Sunday.
Go Matt Patricia! Bob Quinn, baby!
Hold on. You're going to like this one. Hold on. I'm waiting to pull this one out.
It's not your penis, is it?
No. I should probably keep that in there, too,
You should
right?
keep that. I've been waiting to pull this out. It's not your penis, is it? No, I'm realistic, bitch.
This was locker room talk.
Second dick.
Sorry, Detroit. Didn't quite work out.
And all I can say is Detroit Sports Podcast scores.
I hear voices in my head. They counsel me. They understand. They talk to me. They talk to me.